Hello everyone, and Nhire here, and this is yet another build guide. This is something I basically tried making after I kinda succeeded, kinda failed the last build, which was the Molten Strike Radar, and basically the main fault was simply me not being too happy all that much with the build. Simply because there was quite a few situations where you can basically just die because you get a random hit, your HP is not high enough to survive this, and because you only are capped, it's about 75% spell dodge and probably a bit higher for the chance to, evade attacks. It's still not as good as you would think. Normally, when you play without a Jade Flask and yet still have quite a bit of evasion rating with a Raider build, you have about 30-40% chance to evade. Let's say we are at 40. Another thing you get to basically increase this is the more chance to evade projectiles and attacks, which you get from the Ascendancy, which is 35% in this situation, so basically 1/3. Increasing the chance just a bit below 60%, and this can be further increased with things like blind, with things like the 20% reduced accuracy rating from the Ascendancy, as well as Dread Banner for another 21% reduced accuracy rating. However, in the end, even though this kind of increases the chance to evade all the attacks to about 95, if you not in more percent, assuming this as well as some block and about 55 or was a 60% chance to dodge, it's still not perfect, but it's better than the one that you have in front of you right now, which is the Gladiator version. However, the overall observability is way better with this version simply because of the life recovery when you block, and this on its own is really big. Not to even mention, this build is I think one level higher than the one I released last time, but still it is way stronger. The DPS is higher by about 14-16%, so even though the defense is actually up, the damage is also up, so I don't really see any point in playing the Radar other than basically being really fast and having phasing. So pretty much the only advantage of playing the Radar is just phasing through the units, as well as having a lot of move speed, and there is literally nothing else. Straight up nothing else. This build has more damage, more survivability, basically more of everything except the two things I mentioned. And this is practically the final version. However, there's still one more thing I'm planning right now, which is not even going to be elemental related. However, this is going to be basically an update video containing the previous build I made with the Albrand's Warpath on a Gladiator, and that is going to be most likely my most min-maxed and most broken character I'll ever make. And currently it's not ready, and I will be basically regrading this build a little bit so I can actually transfer this to the one I'm planning on right now. And most of the gear is already prepared. However, I still need to finish one of the rings, as well as the belt, which still misses its resistances. After I'm done with that, and after this video is recorded and posted, I will most likely transition and get that build ready, get a lot of footage along with all the fights, such as the Cortex, Uber Atsiri, Shaper Elder, and Chayula. And then it's probably gonna be the end for me, since I already am getting quite bored with the league, and so I don't really want to continue playing it. Alright, either way, let's just get to the build. This one is, it is strong, so it needs a lot of money. Most of the things in this build are basically made by me, and they're not really difficult to make. I mean, it's all kind of luck dependent, and considering my luck is completely non-existent, then basically it's gonna be pretty easy to make for you. Most of the things don't really require much, except just less than 1x actually of investment to make. For example, the rings I make. These rings are just T2 elemental damage of attacks, fractured. You get a fracture from the rituals, are really easy to buy, they're really cheap. You can buy a base that is good for you for 5-10 chaos. One of these bases is ruby, and the other one's a 2-stone. The ruby is simply because I just got enough resistances with all the other stuff, so I just needed extra fire, and instead of getting for 2 stone, I just went for the ruby. And what you do in this case, as you can see, there are both elemental damage of attacks. What you just do is just you get Deafening Essence of Anguish, you spam this on the rings, you try to basically get 2 useful mods and a 3rd craftable mod. In this case I got the 2 resistances, one of them is okay, one of them is kind of shit. You could reroll this, not necessarily, but you can if you want to. My resistance is already capped quite heavily, so it's not really necessary for me. And then you just craft life if you're missing life. The second one is basically the same story. This one has literally the opposite of the resistances of the first ring. However, this one has the addition of the increased fire damage, which is really good, and I'm pretty happy I got this one. And this doesn't need anything else. You just buy the ring, you spam Essence of Anguish, get the mods you want. That's the end. The essences are about 3 to 5 chaos, I believe, if you want to buy more of them, obviously. It's going to be about 5-6 each if you buy in bulk. If you buy them one by one, it's going to be like 2-3 chaos each, so it's not too expensive. If you want to take your time, it's going to be a bit more time consuming, but it's going to be cheaper in the end, so if you want to save money, this is probably the way to go. For the amulet, I think I bought this base with the right item level for about 1x. You can buy a bit lower crit multi for just 10c if you want to save some money and get like 3-4% less crit multi. In this case, you basically do the same thing. You just use the Deafening Essence of Anguish for the flat fire. You are hoping for something useful like the accuracy. You can also get accuracy by augmenting an attack modifier from the TFT Discord. And you need the attack modifier to be on suffix so you can get accuracy. And well, when it comes to the mods on the amulet, it's basically things like intelligence, maybe some resistances in case you need them, basically whatever you need. And what you want to allocate is the command of steel, which is 3% chance to block and a 1% increased damage per 1% chance to block, which is in the end 79% increased damage as well as 3% block, which is basically the best for this build. Let's go to the helmet. The helmet is a Molten Strike classic stuff with 2 extra proc. In my case, I was just using pristine fossils, and I got lucky with 2 T2 resistances, and for some reason I also got increased elemental damage, which is really nice. You can probably try going for the pristine plus prismatic fossils if you want similar results. And as for the -9 to fire res, it's really easy to get. You just need to have fire res on your helmet as well as an open suffix, and then you just augment fire mode from the TFT Discord, and just like that you get 100% -9 fire res on your helmet. And then you just try to get a decent life, and if you already got one or you got a hybrid, you just craft the flat life, or in case you got normal life, you just craft the hybrid life. And all in all, it's pretty easy to make. This one cost me probably not too much. The base I think was about 10 chaos. I used an orb to get this influence for about 1.5x, because you do need to have this influence if you want to have the elemental damage or the -9 fire. So this is the best way to get the most DPS out of a helmet. In the end, the overall cost to make this helmet was about 3.5x. You can make it cheaper, obviously, in case you find Molten Proc with this base, with this influence for cheaper from somebody else without having to actually use the orb. For the body armor, this is something you pretty much can easily make as well, using either Harvest and just reforge an item using life modifier, with life modifiers or like critical strike modifiers. Probably the best one and the fastest one is going to be the life modifiers version, or you can just use fossils. You can just use fossils to get the max life amount you can possibly get. I got quite lucky and I got myself 53, which is T1 strength, which in the end is basically extra life. Sadly my max life is only T2, but it's still acceptable considering I have T1 increased max life. And then if you have an open suffix and you still didn't get a crit chance, you just have to augment an attack modifier, which is a guaranteed crit chance. And however, the crit chance is 2 tiers, so you probably want to get T1, which is going up to 1.5% crit chance. And the thing you need the most at the end of this crafting session on the body armor is an open prefix, which gives you 7% chance to block attack damage, going from 5 to 7. For the boots, it basically comes roots, which is kind of limiting our amount of the sockets for the gems, which is why this build doesn't use things like custom damage taken for any of the defensive skills. However, in the end, it still doesn't matter because I am doing maps like the Cortex, which is T16 with monster level 83, and I'm using the bonus from the Atlas, as you can... Wait, let's do this one, yes. As you can see here, for the 100% increased effect of additional modifiers on unique synthesis maps. What this means is I'm basically farming Cortex using things like, with things like 70% turbo on all the mobs, with 200% increase, physical damage as extra lightning damage, twice even, so you can have 200 of lightning, 200 of cold, for example. Things like 100% chance to avoid elemental ailments, which in my case makes Immolate, which I use, completely useless, and I'm just too lazy to swap it to something like Conk Effect, so I just go with a 5-link basically, and it's still fine for this build. You can have things like 85% reduced damage from Critical Strike on the mobs, so this reduces the DPS greatly. And the funniest one probably that I've seen so far, well, while I was farming Cortex, is the increased life of monsters, because this one doubled, goes to about 120-130% increased maximum life, and this just makes every single mob in there extremely tanky. But it's a good way to make money, and this build can easily withstand that, even though a lot of other builds just instantly die pretty easily. And that's gonna be it for the body armor. Now we're gonna go to the belt. The belt is pretty classic, you just need life, as much resistances as you can get. In my case, I had an open suffix, so I crafted the rest I was missing, as well as chaos res, because chaos res is always nice. Sadly, we are not camped, and we are not even at 0 chaos res. I think we are minus 30 something or 40 something. Let's see, minus 41, so it's pretty bad, but still, I'm still not dying, so it's actually pretty good. And yeah, I got actually lucky, and I got a high elemental damage with attacks. I think it's a T1. That's a T1. I just used an X by accident. For the gloves, you are playing claws, and you don't really have a way to max your block chance all that easy, so you do need to get block chance on the gloves. In this case, I got pretty low attack speed on those, about 5% block chance, which is a T1, as well as that's a T2 or T3 life. That's a T2 life. And a T1 accuracy. Accuracy in this case was one of the things I was looking for specifically, because I am not using things like precision. I don't have all that much increased accuracy running on the tree, so this is necessary. And then I just craft hybrid life, so just as much life as possible in the end. For the shield, this is self-crafted. You can just go the easy way and just get yourself like 2x shield, which is just going to be life recovery on block, high life, and possibly an open suffix or prefix for hybrid life or second or res or chance to block craft. But in this case, I was specifically going for a shield like this, so I bought this base, and I was just spamming prison fossils until I got T1, T2 life, as well as either T1, T2 increased attack speed, or the T1 attack speed casting speed. In this case, that's attack speed casting speed, as well as the life recovery, obviously. So that's the 3 mods you kind of want. And then I just got myself hybrid life. I blocked a suffix, and then I just tried to craft the with augment fire from the TFT for the fire as extra chaos, and I rerolled it a few times, but still the highest I got was T2, which as you can see goes up to 10%. In the end, this is still pretty much 10% more damage. However, considering some penetration on your tree, if you took the penetration, then it can be very well at 10% more damage, because I think there is not all that much penetration that we take, so this is all that much as close to 9% more damage in the end. And this is still attack speed, this extra attack speed, this is still life recovery, this is still high block, high life, so it's pretty much perfect for this build, both defensively and offensively. And last but not least, when it comes to the items, is the claw, and this claw is actually gonna be pretty expensive to make. Alright, so first off, if you want to craft something like this, you will need Imperial Claw with... Actually, you don't really need a specific item level for this one. It's still gonna be fine, if you get item level 83. This is pretty much the base that a lot of people sell, so you can just find somebody who's got a lot of those to sell, and you will need few of those to begin with, because what you're gonna have to do to get something like this is to get few of those and use deafening essences of zeal, which give you anywhere between 28 to 30% increase attack speed, which is a T0 attack speed roll. And you make sure that you've got 3 suffixes on this. Then you go to anybody who's got the craft for the fracture suffix modifier and just hope you're actually gonna get this attack speed fractures. I'd recommend getting at least 29% attack speed. The difference is just 28, 29, 30, so it's not that hard to get 29, 30%. 30% is obviously ideal, but if you get 29, 28, you just have to reroll. It's better to just use a second essence because the essence is like 4, 5C, so it's pretty easy to get, instead of just divining it for 30%, because divines are 8 and 9C, I believe. So you just use those, you get 30%, have 3 suffixes, get a fracture, then you get attack speed. After this, it would be best to get some quality on your thing. In case of this claw, you're not going to be crafting any quality on a suffix. So basically what you want is going to be 24 and up quality. Sadly, I completely forgot about that, so I didn't do it, and mine only has 20% quality. The main point of getting 24 quality is mostly because of the enchant that you can see on top of the item, which is quality, does not increase physical damage, 1% increase attack speed per 8% quality. So in the end it's 8, 16, 24, in my case it's 20, so I only get 2% increase attack speed, so in the end this weapon has 32% increase attack speed, and so 2.11 hits per second, which is really big. Then when it comes to flat fire, because this is one of the most important things you're gonna need on your claw, you can either just try going for alteration augmentation method to try and get T1, or you can just use deafening essence of anguish once again to get something like something in between T1 and T2 of flat fire. It's slightly lower, I think it's about 10-12% lower overall flat than the original T1. It's still decent. It's pretty much all dependent on how you want to go about it, because it's not going to be that much of a difference. It will be a slight difference in the PS, but it's not going to be anything gigantic. After this, you need to make sure you've got 1 suffix open and 2 prefixes open. With this, you basically have easy way to multi-craft it. So you multi-craft the suffix, which is 2x, and then you craft increased fire damage, which goes up to 60%, and this goes along with the chance to ignite. And the second prefix is gonna be the penetration. Somebody's spamming me stuff. Alright, so you get these 2 prefixes, they are the best ones for this build, but you still have the multi-craft on the suffix, and you probably don't have anything useful on the suffix, or it's basically empty. In this case, what you do is you use another harvest craft to keep the prefixes and reforge suffixes. In case of reforging, if you get something useful, you keep it, and if you get something that's kind of useless but can be removed, you can just remove it using the harvest crafting once again, and then craft crit chance. In my case, I believe I got, what did I get actually? I think I got the crit multi, yeah, the 70% crit multi. Then I think I had an open suffix, so I just got another service from somebody and got myself T2 crit chance, as you can see. And all in all, this is really high damage claw, which is pretty much best in slot for this kind of build. It gives you everything you want, which is crit chance, which is high attack speed, which is high flat, and additional amplifiers to your DPS with both penetration and actual increases to the DPS. As for the actual items for the build, this is pretty much over. Now just flasks. The flask, life flask is actually entirely up to you. In my case, I just love using the eternal ones because you can use them 3 times and with increased life recovery. So this one is 2.5k life with over 2.7 seconds, and because on the tree I am using this boy right here, herbalism, this is actually increased even higher, so it's pretty good to quickly get your life back. The second one is a classic diamond with attack speed and increased duration. We are using Calm's roots, so you don't need things like freeze immunity. If you want to, you can go for things like curse immunity or ignite immunity. It's entirely up to you. In this case, I just got more attack speed because this is a boss killer, so I don't really get ignited or cast all that much, it doesn't make all that much difference to me, so this is still fine. Next one, Dying Sun. Yeah, by the way, I don't have any quality on those flasks, sadly. But Dying Sun with reduced charges used, so you can actually use it twice. Extra 2 proc, that's a lot of extra damage. You need it 100% for every Molten Strike build. Cinder Swallow, you do ignite enemies, so this is 10% increased damage taken for them, and that's really good. And you specifically want the crit version, and I got a trait. You specifically want a crit version for this, so it's basically just more damage. This is the best version for this kind of flask. And the last one being the Bottle Fave, the highest increase in for the DPS. When it comes to this build, increased damage taken, increased damage, extra crit chance. Not even mention if there's anybody on the consecrated ground, they get 100%. Wait, what was it? They basically have increased chance to be critically stroke. How do you? I don't even know. I think you get 100% increased critical strike chance, basically, as well as the life regeneration. So in the end, this is extremely powerful. Not to mention you have 3 uses, and they go up to 6 seconds, and with quality 6.8 seconds or so. So this is gonna be pretty fucked up. And somebody just sent my Discord, and I just barely muted myself just to avoid any additional embarrassing stuff in this video. Now going for the tree. We start classically in the Gladiator area, going through all the block related stuff, as well as through the bottom of the skill tree for the point blank. When you level, you don't exactly have to do this, you can just go through this area, as well as get the Jewel Sockatelion. However, you're gonna be refunded this anyway, so there is no point getting this unless you really want to. Going through this area here for the life regeneration, as well as the block chance, with some extra block chance here, as well as attack speed and intelligence, getting life. And during the leveling process, I was actually taking the sword notes and using Ever's Mirage, dual wielding them, simply because they give you 1 additional projectile, as well as a lot of increased elemental damage of attacks, and a high lightning damage base with quite an acceptable attack speed. So this is pretty nice for the early game until you actually hit maps. And after you actually finish the storyline, you can remove all of those points using the refunds from the quests and just go for the claws, which you were slowly building towards over the leveling process. Take all of this, get rid of all of that, take your point blank if you didn't get it yet, because you maybe don't want to level with Molten Strike. Why am I getting all these traits? I just want to get it. I should have most likely just, and the guy just leaves. Amazing. I should have probably just used D&D. Alright, so after you actually swap between the two, you slowly just take all the necessary stuff, things like extra intelligence, crit chance, extra life, all the life modifiers from this area, which you need to use 2 skill points for, accuracy, which you will really need. And basically there's nothing special about the tree except this one here, because since we are using claws and we don't have an amazing chance to block, we needed to get one of those to just cap it up, as well as the one node right here for another 2%. And the one we chose is basically 1% chance to block attack damage with only 2 passive skill points, and the specific node that we wanted is the Riot Queller, which is 4% chance to block and 6% increased damage taken on taunted enemies. So when you taunt somebody, they just take extra damage, and that's basically it. And you can use pretty much different ways. In this case, it's going to be just one way to get a taunt effect, and that is from Abyss Jewel. And mine has 5% chance to taunt enemies on hit with attacks, and this is really easy to do because this build has an amazing amount of attack speed as well as an amazing amount of projectiles, and considering you have both the attacks and projectiles, and every single attack makes 12 projectiles with GMP during the farming, grinding, killing the mobs randomly. It's really easy to get it. On boss fights, you still have your crazy attack speed with 8 projectiles, so it's still gonna be extremely easy to get. So the bonus from the taunt, increased damage taken, is gonna be a thing and really easily achievable. This specific jewel is actually really insane for this build, since you also get flat fire to claw attack specifically, as well as really high life. So all in all, it's really nicely combined together, and it just works great. The last things when it comes to the tree are gonna be the jewels, which I have 3 of. They're basic stuff, so basically things like max life, attack speed, and crit multi. This one is double crit multi with life, This one here is life, double attack speed and crit multi. And the last one is double crit multi, all res and life. And as you can guess, this one was quite expensive. So when it comes to the tree and when it comes to the items, that's basically it. And the last thing I'd like to mention are basically the jewels, which in this case, well, quite a few, because we are using a portal scroll, portal gem, not scroll, as well as Calm's Root. So that's basically 5 gems out of the setup. For the claw, I mean, well, it doesn't really matter where you have this stuff on. In my case, this was just the easiest to get these colors on. But still, we got William Blades with Blood Rage as well as Blood Magic. I don't use faster attacks because this build simply has so much attack speed, it's ridiculous. So even though I'm not even using faster attacks, if I have everything on, like I have my Onslaught, I have my Frenzy charges, I have Blood Rage, I have my Chandra charges, it's just so quick to use. If you just press it the wrong way, you can just William Blades twice and just go back and forth and just get lagged in a wall or something like this. So that's not really recommended, which is why I'm just not using it. For the helmet, Enlighten, Flammability, Blasphemy and Anger. You can also use Flammability along with the Hex Touch on the Tempest Shield, so you apply the chaos on block. However, it is recommended, or rather it's just better to use it as an aura, and there's not really much stuff that you can take instead of this 35%. You can obviously take precision, which in this case would just increase the PS a little bit, but yeah, it's not by much, since you already are at 100% chance to hit, so that's not really necessary. The other thing you can get is Vitality, which is actually pretty useful. However, I still think the Aura one is just better, so that's why I chose this one. And obviously you need things like Anger, Molten Strike and Immolate at level 21 for the max flat damage bonus. Next, this shield. Animal's Reckoning. This one gives you 40% chance to debilate, I don't even know how to pronounce that, on hit. And this is really nice because debilate reduces damage from the enemies hit by it by 10%, which is really nice when it comes to survivability. Next thing is the Power Charge and Critical Strike. Next, Power Charge and Crit Support. Well, same thing anyway. This connected with the Reckoning, and the Tempest Shield gives you really nice power charge generation, since you always proc Tempest Shield when you block, and this one has 0.4 seconds cooldown and it's AoE, so it's pretty easy to actually crit with this one, because this one has crit chance based on the weapon, and this one has just 6% crit chance. So this one actually has high chance of getting you power charges. However, in pretty much all the situations, you have your power charges up thanks to both of these, so there's not really much to think about in the end. Gloves, Portal, Ancestral Protector, Ancestral War Chief, and Blood and Sand. Nothing special here. Blood and Sand is mostly for the DPS as well as the challenger charges, and whenever you fight in a boss, you just switch to Blood, mostly just because it's more area damage, and Molten Strike projectiles are area damage, so it just fits, and it's only 10%, so it's perfect. And for the body armor, just got Immolate, Combustion, Multi-Strike, Molten Strike, GMP, which is well for slow proc, and Ancestral Call, which is well for elemental damage of attack supports. And this is kind of annoying to swap when you fight a boss, but it is kind of necessary for the most DPS. Slow proc is not as gigantic damage difference when it comes to supports like concentrated effect, but slow proc reduces the kind of like radius in which the projectiles are flying to. So let's say when you're fighting a big boss, which is quite big, you have about 70% of your projectiles hitting the boss, everything else is just going around it. But in case of slow proc, more than 90% of your projectiles actually go inside the boss. And if you take this thing right here, Adjacent Animosity, then you do get another 20% reduced projectile speed, which reduces this range even further, making all the projectiles hit the boss all the time, increasing your DPS tremendously. And if you count it properly, if with this build, if everything hits the boss, your melee hit as well as all the projectiles, that's about 16-17 million DPS with this tankiness. And this build is not even finished. This build will be finished around level 97 or so. So this will be really big. And I think that's actually it, guys. There's not much I'm gonna mention after that, but there's also the fact that I'm gonna be making another build, which is basically gonna be literally the same concept when it comes to the ascendancy as well as skill use. However, the entire equipment is gonna be different, and well, let's actually just give you a sneak peek in this situation. I've got this stuff right here, pretty much prepared. The only things I need are gonna be the boots, as well as fixing this ring right here, which is the T1 strength from T0 strength rather, because it's the one from the essence going up to 58 with increased strength, nice resistances, increased damage. Just needs the life fix, and it's gonna be amazing. The belt that needs 20% damage craft as well as the resistances. This ring is pretty much ready. Intelligence is obviously for the repentance, which is also with the sprint hit for the increased case damage taken. Specific claws made just for this build with the spell damage, just for the repentance and the crown of ice combo. A perfect iron fortress with extra strength, which still needs quality from Hillock. A shield with life recovery on block, extra strength, extra life, and an open suffix for resistances, which I really need to actually cap everything up. And well, inertia, corrupted blood cannot be inflicted, and jewels with life, crit multi, resistances, strength, basic stuff. But in the end, I think with all the right items and when everything is finally done and divined, it's most likely gonna be about 1900 strength with over 7.5k life and over 60 million DPS. This build, when it's ready, is gonna be probably the strongest build I've ever done, which is why I'd like to have probably a few more days until it's actually ready to record. And in the case of this build, I actually want to make a really long video, even longer than this one here, even though this one is already 31 minutes, but it's gonna be even longer one, and I'm gonna have all the fights with Maven, so basically Shaper Guardians, Elder Guardians, Bridge Lords, Memories, and then the 5-way fight with Cortex, Uberatsiri, Shaper, Elder, and Chayula. I'm gonna have all of these fights in the single video, as well as the guide, as well as all the items and everything included in it. So wait for it, it's gonna be cool. I hope you guys like it. Have a nice one, and I hope you like the video. See ya.